live video, and if the creek ain't too loud, well, I guess you can't really see what I'm doing here. I'm sitting here cooking breakfast, so I thought I'd bring people in on it. Haven't made any videos for a long time. If anybody's watching, can you let me know if you're hearing this and if the sound's not delayed like the old Kung Fu movies? So, I haven't made any videos for a while for a few reasons. Well, it's been a week is what it's been. But here I am cooking my breakfast. What I basically do is have biscuits every morning. And I've been finding if I cook... Oh, whoop. Good. Sounds fine. Cool. Awesome, thanks. And there's John Coke. Great. So since it's hot these days, well, hot for this area, it's getting into the 80s and maybe 90s sometimes. And I'm still cooking on fire. I've decided if I remember to cook in the morning, let me see if I can adjust this a little bit. Oh shoot. If I remember to cook my lunch in the morning, then it makes everything a whole lot easier. For lunchtime, I don't have to heat anything up because I've also got cold brew coffee now. So it makes cooking a whole lot easier. Let's see if I can find a happy medium here. Yeah, quite a bit missing the Old West. But I'm trying to relive it here myself. I got an idea. I think it's too close. There we go. Hopefully y'all can still hear me. There we go. So by cooking my lunchtime in the morning, then I don't have to cook for lunchtime when it's hot, and then for supper. So last year, no, 2 years ago, right over here behind me, right about back there, I had my camp and I was cooking by fire. But when it got warm, it just got too miserable to cook on the fire because I was getting all kinds of smoke in my face and it was hot. It was just miserable, and that was like 7 o'clock in the morning. And so I gave up on it and I cooked by propane. But since then, this year, I've been following the shade. So in the morning I'm over here while it's shady until about, this spot stays shady until about 11 o'clock. And then after I cook breakfast, I move my stuff over there and we hang out over there when we're hanging out, not doing stuff. So as long as I'm in the shade, it's not too hot for cooking over fire. So that's excellent. That makes things more, it makes it more self-reliant because I'm just cooking on firewood. And it also makes it cheaper. I don't have to buy propane or anything like that. So this has been pretty cool this year, being able to cook on fire all the time. And with this small cooking area, it doesn't take much firewood either. So I can have a fire up and going in just a few minutes and then be done cooking and have it all done in about half an hour, depends on what I'm making. Today I got a little bit of a treat because I couldn't find my chicken eggs for the longest time. And I found, oh crap, I found a bunch These dang goats, they come in like a wrecking ball. Hey, don't walk on everything, all right? I don't like that. So I finally found some eggs. And then also when I was in town, we got these lakes. See if she's gonna break my eggs. We got these lakes in town called freeway lakes because they were dug up when they were making the freeway. Hey you, there you go, have a seat. Ah. And they stock them with fish. So I stopped by there yesterday because I had to go to town. And I didn't get any big trout, maybe because it was too hot out, but I caught a little crappie. And so that'll go nicely with my 2 eggs. Right, little goat, little stinker. I've also found that if I mix up and prep my food before starting the fire, believe it or not, that took me a few times before I figured that out. So that helps. Just prep the food. Then I keep the fire going for a minimal amount of time. So I got further on my project of making my pen for my goats and my dog so that I can go on overnight trips. And that's a big reason I haven't been doing any videos, because I kind of focused on that. And I went to town yesterday for the first time in a while because I was able to leave the goats and dog home, the big dog, Maximus. And so now I should be able to start going on some trips and making some videos again. Doing some overnighters with horses and doing some historical sites with my motorcycle. Kind of have a canoe trip planned, but my buddy and I are rethinking that because the Columbia is pretty treacherous by canoe. And it's about a half-mile crossing that I want to do. And so, really debating whether to do that or not. So, got some good stuff coming up though, that's for sure. I've been cooking with this oven. It's turn of the century, I don't know, 20s, 30s, something like that. Well, maybe even later, but they had them in the, I know, in the early 1900s. It's been working really well, so that's nice. It just takes a fire, it doesn't take coals. Because as some of you know that watch, I don't have a lot of coals around here. The fire burns up too quick and the coals don't really last to cook over. So I have to cook over fire. And with this oven, it works pretty well. And then for other things like boiling water or frying eggs, flame just works just fine. As long as I don't catch the olive oil on fire. So that's what's going on here. All right, I got my biscuit mix up. And, well, some of y'all might not like this. I screwed up with my char cloth. Char cloth's a key ingredient for using flint and steel. And let's see if I got any comments I'm looking at. Chad, right, howdy, Chad. Welcome, everybody. I've been having a hard time with char cloth. I've never had a problem making char cloth, and then the last 2 times it didn't work. And so I got kind of fed up, and I've been using birch bark. I use just a little bit of birch bark, and then I get some tinder ready, and then I get the fines ready. And but I've been starting the birch bark with a lighter. I know that's disappointing, but it's just for a temporary thing. as long as I'm careful, it doesn't take much to get it going. I'm doing this 2 or 3 times a day. I've been getting kind of good at it. If anybody's got any questions, feel free to ask. We're just chilling here. Breakfast time on the creek. It's not even 7 a.m. Not here. But it's perfect weather. A little cool enough to wear a shirt, so I don't get too hot next to the fire. But warm enough to go barefoot. It's just perfect. Last year by this time we had 100-degree weather. I gotta get that out of the view. We had 100-degree weather by this time. It was miserable. This year it's just been perfect. Whoops. Let's see. I got my fish in the cooler there. This oven's awesome. I might do a video on it. I got a friend who does the Boy Scout type stuff. I posted a link of his, and he's going to do a demo on these ovens, and I might do a demo as well. Yeah, Ohio's hot, and I hear Texas is hot, and Utah is hot. Lots of places are really hot. But up here in the Pacific Northwest, it's been cool. Same with Montana, apparently. They've had a whole lot of rain. It's just another weird year in its own way. So the reason I went off grid, kind of funny, honestly, when I was younger, I really wanted to live this way. I started reading old books like Mark Twain, you know, Tom Sawyer, and the Little House on the Prairie books. And my dad was almost like a hoarder, and I always felt weighed down by all that stuff. And I just wanted freedom from all that. And I had this idea that the old times were better times. I always longed for that simplicity. I had this weird mental mindset where I'd always lean towards stuff, and I'd ask, like I'd look at, it's kind of hard to explain, I don't really understand it really well, but I'd look at stuff and think, now would they have had that if we didn't have modern technology? So I always looked at everything from this filter of, would that work without modern technology? We're talking like since I was 13. And it's almost as if I was prepping for some kind of societal collapse, which wasn't really the idea, except for in, you know, in just like daydreams. Oh, what happens if we got to go live, like something happens, we got to live that way. Could I be ready? And so always looked in that point of view. I always wanted to. So as you can see here, I don't necessarily have containers. Not everything I have is old technology. I got a modern cooler, and you saw that laundry basket that I'm keeping stuff in, because I got to haul all my stuff, all my cooking stuff, after I ate breakfast around 1 o'clock it's nice and shady over there, so I got to haul it over there. So I got it in all these dumb containers that I got right now. Eventually I want to have all wood containers, and so that everything around here is all natural and rustic. I was in town yesterday and I meant to buy this old case, but I didn't. I've also figured out I don't have to cook with twigs. They make a nice hot fire, but I can actually fit bigger firewood in there. So once I'm done cooking, I just dip this in the creek, put it out, and then I use it the next time. That's how little bit of firewood that I use for cooking. All right, let's see if we got some questions here. Thanks for the likes. Thanks for watching, guys. Looks like we got 13 people. Simplicity is something we should all strive for. I think the world as a whole would be happier. I totally agree. I'm more convinced about that than ever. And I didn't live a simple life. It took me a long time to break away from my own hoarding stuff. Like, I'm sentimental. I like to keep everything. And it took me a long time to get over that. But man, now that I'm freer, I just feel like it's a good, not just like a me personally thing, but I just feel like a lot of happiness and having a simplistic life. Yeah. Yep, better times. I will say though, I think this is an awesome time to live, though. I know that's not popular with all the political crap we got going on, but we don't have to drink whiskey if a doctor is gonna set a broken arm. We can actually, I had a broken arm once and they put me out. I mean, that was great. You know, I hardly had any pain from that. I didn't even take pain pills because the pain wasn't too bad afterward. But for the setting of it, man, if I had to do that conscious, I would have been miserable. And we know about things like germs and antibiotics if we need them. I don't like antibiotics, but man, they come in handy if you need them for infection. We live in this wonderful time. I can buy this flour for $3 a bag. So I can stock up for a year's worth of flour for a couple $100. Go out and hunt and fish or raise a cow or something. And my food is almost all set from that. This right here represents a ton of work, if your crop even comes in, when you're dependent on it. That's why, I mean, I know it makes it easier, but we live in such a great time that we can live like this, but also have just a few modern conveniences that make life so much easier. So I try to have that mindset. It really is true, even though I miss the old days when places were less populated and we didn't have cars and all that stuff. But there are a lot of advantages to focus on, that anybody could go to Wyoming and live in the least populated state in the country and yet still have a few benefits. Yeah, constant middle finger at modern society. It's kind of how I feel. I drive a beat up pickup truck too. That's my middle finger to society. Everybody has to put thousands and thousands of dollars in their trucks. Well, I put the bare minimum in. I think my temperature gauge actually works on this thing. I just assumed it didn't, but I think it does, so that's kind of cool. Guys, if you're not doing cold brew coffee, this is the way to happiness. All you do is fill it up to about here with coffee grounds. It could be kind of a more coarse ground than drip coffee, a little coarser, maybe French press ground. You fill it with water, and then you let it sit for however long you want. These actually sat, I did 2 jars and mixed them into one. They sat for about 2 days. and it comes out really smooth, and you don't have to heat it up. It's amazing. And I've been getting off of creamer, believe it or not. But I was in town yesterday, a friend and I grabbed some coffee, and they gave me a great big thing of half and half. So I thought, oh good, I'll have some of that in my cold brew in the morning. But that is the way. But I'm glad I'm weaning off of creamer, because creamer is expensive and it's hard to keep it in this warmer weather, even though I'm using the creek. That creek got kind of warm. So after I cook my bread here, I'm going to cook up my fish. It's a little crappie, but like I say, if I add an egg or two to it, I cut the tail off, cut the head off. So it'll add a little bit of protein to a couple of eggs and make for a good breakfast with my biscuits. Really looking forward to that. I think it was too hot because I was out there at 5 o'clock. It was sunny and warm. And we're supposed to get rain tomorrow and a high of like 75 degrees tomorrow. Hey, that's good. Coffee's better than chewing tobacco, that's for sure. So it's only supposed to be in the 70s tomorrow. So I thought tomorrow I would run to one of the lakes or try a couple of them if necessary, and see if I can get a few more fish. They're stocked, so it's not as cool as going out and catching, something wild from the creek. But right now, honestly, I'm hungry. Last year I stopped buying meat, and so I have to get chickens or butcher my own meat or find roadkill that's fresh or go fishing to eat. And so I got pretty hungry the other day because I couldn't find my eggs, and but now things are looking up. So also going to town. Me and my friend went to the Indian buffet. Yeah, that's cool. It's funny how I always had this goal since I was like 13 years old to just live off of things that were like pre-industrial age. I guess the industrial age was kind of spanned a few decades of creation, but pre-1900s, where it wasn't really for a prepping mindset. It was just how I wanted to live. We moved out onto a river, and I was so excited thinking that we were going to live old-fashioned out there, but we didn't. I was like the only one in the family that really thought that way. My brother made fun of me for that, as if I was deranged. But now I'm on my way to doing it. Like I said about modern times, though, screw lids make life so easy. I've got a canteen with a cork, and it still leaks. Plastic is huge. It's amazing, like containers. Plastic is just such a wonderful material for containers, because wood dries out and it twists, or it just dries out and doesn't hold anymore. Always got to worry about that stuff. But I mean, I would rather have all wooden containers. I'd rather have all just natural stuff. I don't like looking at my cooler's sitting right there. I don't like looking at it. It's just like a big beacon of modern technology in my face. So eventually I would like to get rid of it. It's just amazing how when you live this way, it kind of makes you think of the Indian tribes, how they kind of, in some ways, they lost their lifestyle by welcoming in these modern conveniences. I know there was a lot of war and injustices as well, but that's not all that there was. There was also in the very earliest days, they welcomed the white people by being attracted to the blankets that they had to offer and the metal pots that they had to offer. Because it's just funny how those kind of, just a little bit of conveniences can make a huge difference. In a primitive lifestyle like that. Like a metal pot, and all of a sudden now you don't have to heat up rocks to boil water in a deer's stomach or something. It's just kind of amazing how yeah, we really do. And replacing. Hey, Eric. I didn't notice that was you that said that. Eric, welcome. You been wearing that hat? Hey, well, greetings to Kentucky. Yeah, it's a perfect morning, especially when you sit in the shade. Just over that way is some sunshine, and it wouldn't be nearly as nice. Yeah, I would like to find some clay deposits around here eventually, because yeah, on the terms of containers, I'd like to get all my containers switched over to nicer materials, and clay would be a big one. I think that would be ideal for storing, well, I thought about berries. I'd have to dry berries, but temporary storage, put berries in it. I want to figure out baskets too. Awesome. Yeah, that hat was a good one. I'm glad you got it. Yeah, but you guys know I move pretty slow on these things. I'm still working on my homemade clothing. The trousers fell apart, and I'm kind of stuck on how to improve them. And so I think I'm going to just cut out another pair and make leggings for warm weather. Anyway, got a lot of projects I'm transitioning onto, but the main one that I'm really focused on is got that pin mostly done. And now I got to go do another pin for the other dogs so I can do a motorcycle trip. But now I'm way closer to loading up my horses and getting up into the hills for a camping video. So that's priority. And then all the other stuff is coming along slowly. I'm gonna get back into hides so I can finally finish some hide clothing, deer hides. I got a whole bunch of wool so I can make some felt. I don't need the felt so much right away, but this winter I plan to make some boots that are felt, some trousers that are felt, and a shirt. So I'll be nice and warm with all homemade and natural materials. That part won't necessarily be Old West, but there's different aspects to my lifestyle. The coffee is so good. Cold brew is such smooth coffee. It's really strong without the kick. So you know how you ever driven like, it's like an electric car versus a muscle car. The normal coffee, which I also love, that's really strong, it's like a muscle car where it revs up and takes off and you fly back, versus like a modern fast car, like an electric car, where it just kind of takes off super fast and you don't even notice it until 2 seconds later your cheeks are flying back and you're stuck to the seat. Just kind of revs up smooth. Yeah, lots of good book suggestions. It depends on what kind you're after. So my favorite Old West type books are the ones written by guys that were there at the time. Like there was a guy who was a kid in Texas, and he got on with some of the old trail drivers, the old trails that didn't last very long, but they went up from Texas to Kansas, and then, let's see, those trails got moved west. I think the first time it was from disease that the longhorn steers were bringing to the other cattle, and so they had to push the trail westward, and then they had a new trail drive, and then eventually it went all the way up to Montana because they figured out that Montana was a great place to be. So anyway, that was one book. There's a lot of those first-hand books because in the 1890s, 1900s, there was this big push to fascination with the old days, and so a whole lot of those guys that were still alive figured out they could make money by writing their stories down. Those are my favorites. Suggestions on them. But then there's also like the characters. Like you can find a good book written that focuses on the life of like Wild Bill Hickok or Doc Holliday. So there's that style of book. Or then there's just like, I guess, the history of the Old West where they kind of focus on it. So my favorites, like I said, are the first-hand ones. I can't think any title names, though. I gotta tend to this fire. It says it's not even 200 degrees, so this bread's not cooking. So let me focus on adding some wood in here. Get my breakfast going a little quicker. I don't think you can see it, but I got flint right here. I always have to have an animal or two that's leaning against me. They always got to be leaning against me. Whether it's goats or dogs. I don't mind that. I love having them around. All right, come on. Come on, fire. You got to be careful living on a creek. The other night I was super tired. I had to do a bunch of stuff before I could get in bed. And I had my tripod set up over there and my hat sitting on it. It was dead calm, no wind. So I thought, my hat's fine. I'll just leave it there. I'm going to bed. Well, the next day, I'd forgotten all about it. And then finally I thought, where's my hat? So I tried looking around for it. I don't have a lot of places here that it could be. The tripod was fell over and the top of it was in the water. And I didn't think about the connection there till a few hours later. I realized, oh no, my hat's been swept down the creek. Well, down a little ways, there's a spot where it can get hung up. So I went down there, and sure enough, there was my poor beloved hat sitting in the creek, submerged. It got caught on something, so the water was just flowing, and it beat up the inside. The liner tore out. This part tore, and the band came unstitched part way around it. It's really dirty. Haven't cleaned it up, and it's softer now than it was. It was pretty soft to begin with, but now it's even softer, and the back end is kind of at a new slope, more slope than straight. So anyway, not complaining. I'm happy to have it, but you never know what you're gonna run into living in the wind next to the creek. I'm just glad my hat's still usable. Yes, those. Yeah, let me get some book titles for you. One of my favorites, if you want to look it up, there's an online version, and it's for my local area. I'm up here in central Washington, the Pacific Northwest. Believe it or not, there was a lot more cattle activity up here than people realize. We had at one point we had the largest cattle herd in the United States in the what we call the lower valley. And there was a character here who was a kid when he moved here, and he'd worked for the cattle guys. They'd hire him to, like, let's say they had a herd ready that they wanted to sell to the mines up in Montana or up in Canada. So they'd hire Jack, they called him, and they'd hire him, and then he'd have a couple crew with him, sometimes a few Indians, sometimes a couple white guys, and to do a cattle drive. And so he wrote all about his adventures. He also then would do some of his own financial ventures, where he'd go down to this place called the Dalles, where it was supplied by steamer from the Willamette Valley, which is Portland. So Portland would send goods up to the Dalles. Then they'd go buy up. They'd get money, an investor, go down, buy up a pack string worth of goods for the mining camps, haul it up to the mining camps and sell it, and then that would be their profit, because you mark up big time when you're up in the mines and you're a week away from any provisions, just like modern days. And so his adventures were pretty cool. A lot of first-hand experience about starting in the 1860s. That's why my historical thing is 1860, because I'm mostly based off of him. Whoa, crap. I got it a little too hot. It's up over 500 degrees now, but it'll cool down quick. So anyway, that book is called, it's called Kamiakin, the Last Hero of the Yakimas, because the beginning of the book talks about the Yakima tribes around here, some of the history. It's really cool stories. Then it gets into the Indian wars that we had around here, which to me are just kind of tragic. And then it gets into his own life. So it's like the first quarter or the first third is about the Yakima Indians, and then after that it's all about his life, progressing from 1858 or so to the early 1900s. Western books are always a tragedy to me, like a Shakespearean tragedy, or it's like a happy ever after in reverse. Starts out with the wild and free country, the happily ever after, and then it slowly gets worse and worse as society and civilization moves in. The beginning, his exploits, he'd be basically by himself. There'd always be, at the river, you could find a couple of Indians to pay to take you across the river sometimes, and it was just all wild. He'd stay in their camps once in a while. By the end of the book, he's taken steamships and trains to get back home. And then, in fact, he even put the cattle on a train to haul them out, to ship them to market. So it's kind of sad. It kind of goes in reverse. But it's great first-hand knowledge. That one's called Kamiakin, the Last Hero of the Yakimas. So the title is kind of misleading. Oh, cool. Yeah, salins are an awesome subject. Yeah, Calamity Jane was awesome too. That would be a fascinating book. Yeah, I thought about getting some stiffener for my hat. I might do that. I think I need to get a new hat too, because this one's starting to get holes in the crown anyway. And so I'd kind of like a new hat for when I want to look nice. But at least this one's still hanging in there. Go, dog. You disgusting son of a gun. Go on, go on. Well, my bread cooks, then I'll be able to cook my fish and eggs. That's what's up next. But maybe. I can't close the door with my long-bladed pan, long-handled pan. I need to get a different pan that I can just put in there and close it. And I think it'll bake better. And the long handle is nice usually for cooking. It doesn't get hot, but for baking, it gets really hot. See, not bad. When I cook it on the wood stove, I have to flip it. But with this oven, it actually does a pretty good job. This is exactly how I like it. I like it a little better done than most people would, I suppose. And yeah, it looks like it's cooked inside too, so great. That means I can move on. I gotta set this somewhere that the chickens aren't here terrorizing me, so I'm just gonna put it right here on this metal chair. I had a couple hides work out. I've got a bunch that are over in my horse trailer that I need to get back to working on. But my irrigation problem and my setting up my pen has kind of held me up from doing anything else. So I'm not sure when I'm going to get back to the hides, but I got them sitting there ready. And then we're only a couple months away from hunting season, and then the hides are going to be coming in again. Little olive oil, and some more firewood. If you do read that book, let me know. I'll try to get some more book ideas. Hey, thanks, Felix. Appreciate that. Oh, awesome. You found it. Cool. Yeah, let me know if you read it. One of my favorites. Hey, dog. Another one, if you guys haven't read it, it got really popular. Joe Rogan talked about it. I heard about it before that, though. It's called Empire of the Summer Moon. That one's about the Comanches. That book is amazing. That's what got me into horseback archery. It's a fascinating book. Really well done. It's more of a history rather than a personal account. But man, that book is really good. I found myself in Texas at the end of it by the time I was finished reading it. And right there in some of the country where that book talks about. I mean, it covers a whole wide area, but a lot of it is right there in Fredericksburg, Texas, in the hill country. Yeah, let's see. We've been going for 45 minutes. I'm starting to run out of things to say. I'm glad people came on here. I didn't even tell anyone I was doing it. I wasn't sure how the cell phone service would work, so I wasn't really sure it would even work. So I'm glad it has. This is my morning. I don't normally eat fish and eggs for breakfast. Usually I just do the bread, and I've got some honey, so I've been eating that for breakfast. And then I'm going to bake another one of these. In fact, I'm going to mix it up here in a second so that at lunchtime I don't have to cook. Don't have to heat up my coffee. Don't have to cook for lunch. Makes life easy. And that gets me through to supper time when it has cooled off a little bit. And then I only have to cook twice. So that's the warm weather. When it's cooler out, then I got a wood stove going all day long, and then I just cook all day long. Make coffee anytime. So it's kind of fun living with the seasons and adapting to whatever the season changes require. Then I adjust to it. That's why it's over on the wild side. It's not homesteading where I'm still living like in a house. Even in the Old West, you know, they always had houses and cabins. But this is trying to live more close to nature to understand, be more in connection with it. And I love it. I still got a ways to go. I'm not trying to say I'm like super connected, but every stage along the way is fascinating to learn. I did that video on using cottonwood trees, and just like I say, by living amongst the cottonwood, you really start to get a good understanding of it. And now I've been messing with willow a little bit more. I experimented with willow bark on a really small scale, and I tied 2 branches together and left it, and it's fascinating how well that worked. So you just kind of start observing and experimenting, and living with the shade, hiding out from the sun, but adapting to the sun. Went and worked in it in the 90-degree weather, and that made a lot of progress in getting used to the heat. I've been doing cold. Been doing a lot of progress with the cold, and now I'm working on adapting to the heat. I've always wanted to be able to, well, you remember that story of there was a story in school, we read a book about Aborigines in Australia, Walkabout. Remember that book, Walkabout? And they said that they did an experiment, which is pretty cruel. I mean, yeah, it's not humane now, but it wasn't then either. But anyway, they had an Aborigine guy in captivity, and they tested the temperature range from cold to hot, and they said he was just there wearing, you know, whatever, a breechcloth, and he showed no signs of the cold weather affecting him. That made a big impression on me, because that was not, it might have been more me at the time when I was a kid, but as an adult, I lost any ability to, and so now I'm getting it back. So, anyway. So just like that, I got my biscuit bread ready. So once I'm done frying up that fish and eggs, I'll put some more of this to bake while I eat. And like I said, then my lunch is done. I don't need a lot. In fact, it makes me wonder if other people need as much to eat as they think they do. Granted, don't get me wrong, I got a big appetite if I go into town and get a burger. They never make them big enough. But being minimal on my food needs is pretty handy too. All right, that's ready. Where's my fork? Right there. So I didn't know we had crappie around here. I used to go back to Missouri, where my mom's side of the family is, and we'd fish for crappie in the lake. Hey, the goat's over there. And I'd never heard of crappie out here in Washington, but I caught one yesterday. Hey, baby. Here, come on over here. Yeah, Justin, there's something to be said for, like the far end of the spectrum is just grabbing something out of the freezer and microwaving it versus having to kill it, skin it, gut it, start a fire, and cook it. You're a whole lot more connected. That's something I've been finding, is the connection to what I'm doing. When I go into town now, and if I get food, that's the weird experience for me now. I've come a long way in getting used to this, where there's a lot more depth to eating this way. I had to pull that out of the lake. I had to bring it home, make sure it didn't go bad. I had to feed the guts to my chickens. You're a lot more connected to your food this way versus just grabbing a package out of the store or being at a restaurant. And it's all this food that from around the world that doesn't even grow here, which isn't necessarily bad, but I mean, you're so far disconnected that, like, who knows where the peas came from, and who knows where the chicken came from that it's being made out of. Definitely not a natural lifestyle for the chickens. I'm really against all that stuff. But the connection, being disconnected from it, to me, I think is a really big deal. Being connected to it there's a lot more depth to life, to eating. Well, I don't know if you can hear him. He's snoring over there. I wonder if it's picking up. Yeah, thanks. Well, maybe I should shut this off. Appreciate you guys spontaneously jumping on here with me. That's really cool. Makes it a lot better. Even though, like I said, I didn't announce it or anything. So now that I know it works, I'd like to get back to doing the live videos. And like I say, I'm pretty sure I'm going to start doing a trip a week. Whether it's up to the mountains with the horses or with my truck and trailer to go get firewood. That's a pressing one. Or if it's out on my motorcycle following some of the historical sites around here. I did a video a while back, a year and a half ago, chasing the old cattle trail, I think is what it's called. It's a pretty boring video, but that's from that book, as I am trying to find all the routes that they used in those early days. So that's what the motorcycle trips are primarily for. Because all those old routes have been turned into highways and roads now, because they were the most practical route. Makes sense. So that's what's coming up. Cool, good. I hope you guys like the lives, because I enjoy doing them, and that's what it takes. So, all right, guys. Clint, you want to say bye? All right. say goodbye. So long, folks. Thanks for being here. See you next time. I figure out how to turn this